Serious therapists of Reddit, what are some red flags we should look for in therapists?
Not keeping professional boundaries, like sharing personal information about themselves. Giving you direct advice about a serious decision, like a breakup, expressing their personal opinions strongly. Any sign of judging your decisions, opinions or feelings.
If they immediately try to present you with answers to all of your problems, not lead you to your own solutions. There is a major distinction there.
If they start pushing their religious beliefs on you.
If they start most of their responses with "at least" and then try to put a silver lining on it instead of honoring your pain and what you shared with them. Edit. My use of the word honor in this context is meant to convey that you take a person's hurt and trauma seriously. Don't diminish or downplay what someone went through or how it affected them. Instead, respect what they've been through and how they got through it so you can focus on healing. Edit 2. Thank you to the people that reminded me of Brené Brown's silver lining it talk. It is the perfect example, much better said, and even illustrated in an awesome YouTube video that helped me put this phenomenon into words.
I think there is a misconception that advice giving is what is most helpful. Therapists don't often give advice, but rather they offer alternative perspectives and create space for a collaborative approach to explore new ways of overcoming obstacles. We, as therapists, shouldn't ever assume we know what is best for a client to do. It is their life. If you have a therapist telling you what to do, I would have to assume there is an unhealthy power dynamic occurring which can have a variety of negative outcomes. Of course, there is a time and place for advice, but usually that should come from a peer or family who are essentially at the same power level as you. Edit. It should be noted that suggestions, recommendations, etc. are totally fair game for a therapist to provide. The difference between this and giving is advice is that giving advice assumes you know what is best and you're telling them to do something specifically. I'll often suggest to my clients, for example, have you ever thought about journaling to get some of your emotions out instead of keeping them in? I'd argue this isn't advice. It's up to them to decide whether they want to do it, and I'm not promising any specific outcome. If they seem to like the suggestion, I may assign homework for them to journal. This is more concrete, like some of you have mentioned. But I don't think it is advice. Maybe it's semantics. Also, every therapist has their own style and personality. It's not always going to be a good fit between client and therapist. Shopping around for a therapist should be encouraged if possible. Find what works best for you.
The worst things a therapist can do. 1. Give you solutions and telling you exactly what to do instead of helping you find them. 2. Starting with a faith approach treatment. I have know of therapist whose immediate approach is to evangelize the patient, disregarding their beliefs. A therapist is not a pastor. One thing is discussing your beliefs, another one is the therapist imposing them. 3. A therapist needs to be a blank space where the patient starts putting their ideas. Among the things that means, is that should not be judgmental, and should not involve or establish personal feelings towards you. Is not there to be your friend or partner.
When your therapist is sure that you told them things you never did, and hold those things against you. Had a psychiatrist like that once, glad I got a new one. The things she held against me made me look like I was actually crazy.
I'm in a Masters of Counseling program right now, and one of our professors says his 2 rules are this: if the therapist is not in therapy themselves, run, and if the therapist is not in some kind of consultation with other therapists to get other perspectives their clients, run.
I've had a few really good therapists and a few really weird, off ones. 2 in particular stand out. One asked me where to put myself on the Enneagram, and when I explained that I've adapted throughout my life and can kind of rotate throughout them, she told me that's not possible. When I did the tests and it defined me equally with some, she said I must have lied and continued the therapy but locked me into on type, and if my response wasn't typical of that one personality, then I wasn't being true to myself. I'm not against Enneagrams, but she treated it like a horoscope. I literally wasn't a person to her, just a type. The second one told me I needed more salt lamps at home and that the plants in his office were strategically placed to absorb my negative energy. No dude, I don't need salt lamps. I had just agreed to terminate life support on my brother. I needed to grieve. Oh, and there was the one constantly spending the whole session talking about Trump.
Does it seem like he or she is telling you what you want to hear? Chances are, you went to a therapist in the first place because something isn't going well in your life. If all they are doing is validating your way of thinking without challenging you and offering to teach strategies to help you going forward, chances are therapy from that person isn't going to be any more useful than chatting with your bartender at your favorite pub. Also, therapists too often forget that people lie. If they take patient self-report as gospel, important factors may be missed.
I tried taking to a therapist about abuse I'd suffered as a child. She shut me down and said we should be talking about positive things and looking forward to my future. She did what every toxic adult had done in my life, tell me to avoid my trauma. What a poisonous therapist and experience.
If they keep validating that it's okay you feel the way you do, but offer no alternative way of thinking.
If they disclose more about themselves than you do. When used appropriately, it is usually a way to connect with a client. If every other sentence is, I've found in my life that, they aren't using therapeutic skills, they're just going off of their subjective experience to life.
Finally, I got something to say. Not a doc, but I was a patient of one. I had been seeing him for almost a year and had made significant progress. I witnessed a tragedy. Came in for my 3-month check-in, and he starts talking about his wife, and how she never initiates intimacy with him. I had no idea how to respond. I was still a little fragile but became immediately uncomfortable. The appointment took a weird turn. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. I tell my husband about and how it was really weird overall. Even the receptionist seemed extra anxious. No shit, 2 weeks later, his mugshot is on the local evening news. He was arrested for breaking doctor code and having an intimate relationship with a patient. The patient got overwhelmed and asked to break it off. He became obsessed with her. She filed for a protection order and he broke it. His poor wife and kids were humiliated. He went to jail. Ex-family moves to Houston, I think. I couldn't find a doc that would see me in less than 4 months, so I can to go cold turkey off depression meds. It was hard. I felt horrible for 3 weeks. But I made it through withdrawals and now I live a healthy life. Thanks fam.
Therapist here. They should never make judgments about people in your life, especially yours, so it's pretty basic that you can't form an opinion on someone based on your patient's description. Doesn't mean they never say anything about the relationship, but they should seek a lot of information and only talk about people in relation to you. In the pre-internet era, I referred a woman with an eating disorder to a therapist who claimed to be competent in that area. She was obese and ate a Big Mac while interviewing the woman, who not surprisingly did not return. I also spoke to a woman who, while divulging the fact that her brother had committed suicide, was interrupted by her psychiatrist while he took a phone call.
I had a client tell me about how she had a therapist who didn't believe that the client's parents were physically abusing her when she was a teenager about 4 years ago, and the therapist wanted to talk to her parents to check to make sure the client was telling the truth. You call the child abuse hotline immediately. You don't talk to the abusers to verify the victim's story. This therapist never called the hotline and told the client that she didn't believe her, and my client was abused for 2 more years because of it. If a therapist tells you that she doesn't believe your story, get a new therapist. It's not our job to dictate what is true and what isn't, it's our job to help you process through all of it. Edit, thought I was on mobile and used * for italics greater than ___ less than.
Therapist in training here. I think everyone has covered most of the big ones. Here is a bullet point list of what I think others covered. If they don't provide informed consent. If they don't review the rules of confidentiality every so often. If they strictly provide advice rather than encourage you to think of options, if they don't gently challenge your thoughts and assumptions, if they try to push a religious agenda, checking their phone and email while with you. Here's what I would add. If they ever at any point make a sexual pass or flirt with you. If they try to friend you on Facebook or any other social media. If they disclose identifying details about other clients to you, if they shame you for any decision or otherwise deliberately make you feel bad, if, in group, couples, family, etc. counseling they seem to pick one side over the other, choose a team, if they disclose traumas that happened to them during the session and somehow make the conversation about themselves rather than about you. Hope this helps! ! Edit, dumb mobile formatting. Edit 2, thank you so much for the gold! ! As someone who really needs to see one to get to the bottom of some personal shit, gotta say it is unreasonably hard to find one. Even in a major city like the one I'm in. Navigating that, across what my insurance will cover, and I just end up pushing it on down the road. Really discouraging.
I'd like to take this time to remind everyone that it's important to find a therapist with whom you can click. If their personality is a clash with yours or their modality doesn't work for you, it's fine to find someone else. Hell, it's expected. This is kind of my own personal style showing in a way, but I'm of the opinion that if every session the therapist is talking more than the client, there's something very wrong. It's a little normal for them to interrupt you to focus on something you said here and there, or direct you if you lose your way, but if they're yammering on and you can't even talk about what you wanted to, I'd say that's a pretty big red flag for me. That said, I'd still say give it a couple sessions before deciding on that, because the first session can often mean a lot of information gathering, so they have to touch on a lot of things. I had a single session with a psych almost a year ago. I was 5-ish minutes into answering the question, "Why are you here?" And he stopped me and asked if I had issues with my dad. I told him yes, because I do, and his response was, "Yeah, thought so." When I asked him why, he told me it was because I'm fat, and that girls who have daddy issues either sleep around or put on weight. I'm coincidentally in the waiting room right now to see another one, so wish me luck.
Therapist here. The big three are as follows: talking about themselves in a way that is too detailed or detracts the attention and focus from you. Advice giving: we are not here to tell you what to do. Not referring you on when an issue is out of their competency. For example, attempting to treat LGBTQ issues without training or skills with that particular population.
Therapists who don't set clear boundaries. Boundaries are very important.
As a fairly young therapist, it is not unusual that my patients are unsure about me being competent enough at my age. They will think you lack the experience of an older therapist that has been longer in the job and went through more life events themselves. I think it's important for me to listen to those concerns and, if it is their wish, give them my view on this matter. Usually that's all it takes for them to get more confident in my skills. I think a massive red flag is a therapist that is getting very defensive when confronted with concerns or critics. It's usually a big sign of trust if a patient opens up about those things and a chance not to be missed.
If they work in a lot of things about themselves and their lives.
Consider subscribing.